Hey, so we're now going to talk about. So we have effectively ended the Second French Republic. Mr. Napoleon, Louis Napoleon has utilized the military to crush the Legislative Assembly, to put down any Parisian response to him. Additionally, he had utilized mass politics to convince the people that he alone represented their future. So in the end, it appears that they were okay with his actions. And he's going to use these plebiscites. And I really like how Dr. McKay really unfolds this. So I'm hoping you were able to pay attention in your paragraphs here. But again, he allowed for the direct vote of an electorate uh, for this important constitutional change. He's taken this out of the playbook of his uncle, the original Napoleon, utilizing plebiscites to demonstrate that he represented the general will of the people. So we see an element of this Enlightenment, Rousseau's ideas here. If we actually do a deep dive, which we're not going to, we'll see that there is some Republican-esque look to this empire, that people felt they had a voice. But now he has this plebiscite. And what does he do? He immediately has one that justified his actions. And 92% of France said, yes, we support the coup. We support a reorganization of the government. And then the next year, he is going to utilize another plebiscite to usher in the Second French Empire, and 97% of the electorate. So clearly, public opinion is in his corner here, and he's really ushering in this kind of this element. But as we do this, I do want to point out that Napoleon, he's developing a system in which that he is at risk of all of his leverage is with public opinion. So the moment he begins to lose public opinion, he has to repivot, change, create a mass political movement to help him stabilize. And throughout his reign, he utilized domestic policies to really maintain this public opinion. The economic developments, he really oversaw the transformation of France into this industrial revolution. There had been some things under Louis Philippe, but really we're going to see a real big advancement here. And I love this. I love this graph that I found. It really tells you. You see this economic. This is the GDP, gross domestic product, and what we see here from 1848 to 1858, there's a drastic increase in this wealth. There's a sense that people felt like, wow, we're really living at a great moment. Real wages began to expand. But I want to point out this was part of a greater global trend. So as he's organizing these joint stock banks, as he's organizing railway development, he's really harnessing the energy that is being led by Germany, by being led by England and Belgium. And he's employing elements to really lead this. He rebuilt Paris and implemented public health measures. This is where we already talked about how he reorganized this with new sewers, boulevards, all these parks and things like that. The quality of life of Paris was really increasing. People were really excited about the changes. And there was significant growth riding on this global economic expansion of the 1850s. But look what happens after 1858. Really a little bit before, but we see that dip, and it really stabilizes. So it's not that his policies are bad, but they're really not. He's promising this never-ending progress, that positivism we've talked about. This people are no longer convinced. So after 1858, he is going to have to create significant changes to gain support. Now, with that, he absolutely turns to the working class. He gives them free access to hospitals. We begin to see the first steps towards maybe even a welfare state here. Regulation of pawn shops and credit unions. So he's trying to help them say, hey, I'm a man of the people. I'm going to make sure you're not going to get ripped off and that you have access to wealth. And in the 1860s, with a desire to increase his public support, he then allowed them to form unions and strike. So by the time we get through there is significant progress that he oversees. But remember, All of this progress is an attempt to maintain that public opinion. Really important. These changes are not going to lead to the economic prosperity he's promising. So he's going to have to do something different to gain that public opinion. And what does conservative nationalism tell us? If you don't have it domestically, we need to create an active foreign policy. An active foreign policy is the use of military to expand hegemony or leadership, as well as their position in their empire. So as Napoleon III is convinced the masses that he alone will make France great, he had to prove it through actively expanding its hegemony. Hegemony means leadership, and empire. So coming, especially after the Crimean War, we've already talked about the Crimean War, he gets involved for that Christian hegemony. He wants to take them and say, we're the great Christian leaders. We're the Catholic country. We're the true followers of Christ, if you will. He sent his boys to die for that. And in the end, it was a sense of quote unquote victory with the Peace of Paris that we talked about. But again, this idea, what is making them great? And that's what they're looking at. In 1859, he was convinced by Count Cavour that he should get involved in the Austro-Piedmont War to support Italian nationalism. The problem here, though, little side note, the problem with the Austro-Piedmont War is once he gets involved and once he starts gaining victory with the Piedmontese against the Austrians, a guy named Otto von Bismarck in Prussia, we're going to talk about tomorrow, he threatened to get involved. And Napoleon III, understanding the balance of power, he began to recognize that he could not compete against an Austro-Prussian front. So in 1859, he's actually going to unexpectedly slip out, and that's going to humiliate them. So going into 1860, he pulls that kind of that Peter III thing that occurred in Russia. So now people are like, wait a minute, are we the leaders of Europe? Are we not the hegemon? What's happening here? Well, the 1860s, taking advantage of the American Civil War, as he's taking advantage of the American Civil War, where the United States could not enforce the Monroe Doctrine, he sends a military to actively invade Mexico in hopes to expand the French Empire. This is going to be an absolute failure. He sends in a guy named Maximilian Habsburg to be a pseudo-emperor underneath Napoleon. There was a sense of excitement. We're going to talk about this white man's burden that he was going to save Mexico, a whole bunch of stuff. But in the end, not only did he retreat out of Mexico, Maximilian, his chosen leader, will be beheaded by the Mexican people. So again, we see this shifting, this promise of greatness. We're great. We're going to be great because we're going to lead this way. And there was a sense of this French nationalism. But again, every time this French nationalism, yes, the Crimean War, yay. Austro-Piedmont War, yay. But Mexican invasion, we lost. We're not great. And that's going to cause Napoleon to make some drastic changes. And this really leads us to the limits of this new conservatism. Napoleon III had utilized faux democratic reforms to build on his popular support. Faux means fake, empty. And yes, there's a legislative assembly, but there's no ministerial responsibility. So therefore, it had no real power. The assembly did allow for opposition to form. The Republicans, monarchists, and liberals are going to form this really weird coalition in opposition. But again, Republicans, monarchists, and liberals, they're going to have very little in common except for anti-Napoleon. In 1869, there's a public opinion poll that Dr. McKay cites in which 45% of the electorate opposed Napoleon's active foreign policy. It's not surprising they made. There's a significant failures. We're going to find out Germany is unified at this time. There's a sense of greatness there. Italy is forming a unification. And here's France, who's supposed to be the hegemony or the leader of Europe, and they're really not doing anything. So the people began to think, is this really great? Again, Napoleon being masterful here, utilized mass politics. He held another plebiscite that despite the growing opposition, he was able to secure 83% of the vote. So the eve of the Franco-Prussian War that's going to completely humiliate France, we're going to see this later, it seems like Napoleon, despite these slips in public opinion, is still going to be able to maintain a strong hold. So with that said, let's just look into the evaluation here of Napoleon's rule. The successes, I do think economic developments are key, workers' rights key, and really these hospitals and public health measures. Really, Napoleon is going to transform modern France. France before his rule looks different than after his rule. So despite his failures that we're going to look at, he is going to be, I would argue, he's more successful than a failure today. But his failures all fall into the active foreign policy, Mexican invasion. His active foreign policy, actually, we're going to see strengthen Prussia, not France. And when it comes to the Franco-Prussian War, we're going to see how Napoleon III actually gets, not only loses, but gets captured by the Prussian army. So this ultimately just kind of brings us to the end where I think Napoleon III is the greatest example of this new conservatism, where a new conservative leader is going to utilize mass politics to create a conservative base, to create a conservative nationalism, but he is now at the beck and call of the public opinion. And ultimately, those emotions are going to run out and leads him to dismay. And I hope that makes sense. Of course, you can always email me questions, and hopefully we will see you guys soon.